Conservatives are seizing on this week's report from the Auditor General. Karen Hogan looked into the country's international student program from 2023 to 2024. She found nearly 150,000 cases were flagged for potential non-compliance or fraud, but only 4,000 were investigated. Today, the Conservatives are calling for the Prime Minister to fire Immigration Minister Lena Diab and her predecessor Mark Miller and his predecessor Sean Fraser.
Only 3% of the 150,000 cases of suspected fraud were investigated at all. Mr. Speaker, not only that, of the 3% that he did have investigated, they abandoned half of those because the suspected fraudster did not respond to investigators' emails. Will the current Liberal Prime Minister take responsibility, fire that minister, the Justice Minister, and the Immigration Minister?
The report examined 18 months. The government had already initiated improvement to the system way before the audit started. Since 2025, 100% of referrals from institutions were examined. We have control over the student visas. The numbers prove it. Thank you.
Time now for the Power Panel. Supriya Dwivedi was an advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Nathan Cullen is a former NDP MP and BC NDP minister. Emily Nicolas is a columnist for The Devoir. And Kate Harrison is a Conservative political analyst. Nice to see you all. Thanks for being here. Kate, I'll start with you. Why should these ministers be fired?
Well, the rot runs deep through the foreign student program. We are talking about a significant number of fraudulent cases having made their way through the system, just over the course of 2 years to the graphic you showed, JP, over 150,000 cases, suspected cases of fraudulent activity. Over the course of that 2 years, there appears to have been about 800,000-ish overall permits granted. And so that's a significant percentage of cases that are deemed to be fraudulent. It wasn't really surprising to see that the program had been neglected at best and mismanaged is probably a more accurate way of putting it. And at some point, there does need to be accountability. It's all well and good that, considering the massive decrease in foreign student permits that were granted in the last year, that the fraudulent cases, even amongst those, are being examined. But the neglect has been there for some time, and the mismanagement has been there for some time, and there should be accountability rather than rewards of being put back into cabinet. And in the case of Mr. Fraser, getting perhaps even a larger portfolio following his time at immigration.
Supriya, there was 153,000 potentially non-compliant students. There were 800 cases of outright fraud, like the department knew that there was fraudulent behavior going on, and they did not investigate any of those 800 cases of fraud during the period between 2018 and 2023. The AG found they just essentially ignored it. There's a lot of non-compliance and there's quite a bit of fraud in this program. I take the minister's point that they've kind of cracked down on it to this point, that they're working on improvements. But this is a really bad state of affairs, right? In this international student program, obviously there was a ton of abuse. Do you think that some heads need to roll? Do ministers have to take the fall for what went down?
I think it's very unlikely that the Prime Minister is going to fire immigration ministers past, irrespective of whether or not there may be a shuffle in the future and, the current minister kind of gets shuffled out, remains to be seen. But to your point and to Kate's point about, everything that the department kind of hasn't been tracking, one of the more interesting tidbits I found in all of this was that the immigration department also doesn't seem to be tracking why approval rates were down to begin with, right? Like there was a 41% approval rate in 2024, which was significantly lower than the two previous years at 58% and 54%, and they don't know why. And it just seems to me that we should be tracking all sorts of things, like when students have left, when they're trying to extend their stay, when they're trying to change the nature of their stay, like applying for permanent residency, when they're committing fraud, and please follow through on that. Like don't just take they didn't answer and that be the end of it. Like we should be tracking all of it. And while I certainly understand that the department might not have the resources to do this at the scale that's potentially needed, it seems like we should probably be giving them the resources to do this, or at least, streamlining the efficiency of other agencies to be able to talk to one another and keep one another in the loop. The last thing I'll say on this, though, is that, the underlying cause or a contributing cause, if not a formative cause of this, student visa fiasco are these kind of fake colleges that operate in strip malls and just pump out diplomas while charging international students an arm and a leg here. And provinces have a role in that too. Provinces need to crack down on these diploma mill post-secondary institutions that are, provincially designated and regulated.
Yeah, Nathan, to that point about they can't keep track of what happens to these students when their permit is up. I mean, 549,000 individuals were on study permits. They expired in 2024. They know 93% of them stayed in this country, so they didn't actually leave when the permit was up. They got some other immigration status. But 39,500 people they can't really keep track of. They know 16,000 of them probably left. The other 23,500 international students, they have no idea where they are and what they have done and if they're still in this country or not. I mean, that's not a small number. 23,000 people. That just says something about our immigration system, doesn't it? That they really aren't necessarily well versed on where people are at. Can we hear you, Nathan? Maybe you're on mute. You might be on mute, my friend. Click that button for us. No? Something going on there? No luck? All right, let's ask that to Emily. What do you make of those numbers, Emily? I mean, 23,500 people, they're not sure where they are.
Yeah, there needs to be a lot more to our understanding of this question than just will a minister resign, although I understand it's parliamentary legal game. To Supriya's point, the question of diploma mills is really, really important to investigate, because basically if you lost track of that many people in the country, it means that there is a system in place and that there are institutions or organizations that are fraudulent in Canada that are aiding in this, and that the students, the international students themselves, are perhaps as well both, I guess, complicit and victims of the system that is in place. And so we really need to have more information beyond the responsibility of just Immigration Canada. And I will just say that it's been years that immigration has been understaffed, and it's on two fronts. It's what we're talking about today, that there are some investigations that need to be done that are not done. But I just want to flag as well that most of the time, it's also people who are following the rules, who are on wait lists forever, who are kept in limbo about what is their fate. And there has been delays that are completely inhumane in terms of people's ability to have an answer in time when it comes to the immigration system. And because people are waiting for permits or they're waiting for PR, there's very few of them that dare to go to media because they think it's going to have an impact on them. And so tonight, the issue is fraud, but there's also, on the other side of the spectrum, there's the other people that want to get in Canada for a good reason, or already here and need to have access to a permit for good reason, who are also disserviced by Immigration Canada. So that whole department has been acting in a way that's inhumane for a while on certain set of issues. And the result is that it breaks trust in the country, and that it gives air to sometimes populist rhetorics that blames the immigrants for the incompetency of the bureaucrats in a way that is really, really unhelpful to the state of the public discourse. And for the Liberals themselves, like, if they want to support what they think is liberal values, they really need to get their act together now.
So, Kate, while 153,000 non-compliant students were not investigated between 23 and 24, or essentially not, 4,000 were investigated, kind of. But the minister is now saying, okay, every time an institution flags a potentially problematic student who might be non-compliant, we've been able to check up on them since last year, so nothing is getting biased now. Does that make you have confidence in the international student program?
No, because we're accepting far fewer international students. So I would surely hope that they are able to keep better tabs on a, much smaller number of those people. The issue, JP, here is that we know the government has enforcement capabilities. We're in tax season right now. I'm sure a lot of Canadians might have owed money on their taxes, and you know that CRA is relentless in their ability to come and collect from Canadians. Yet it seems the ability to enforce shoddy immigration laws, everybody was asleep at the switch in terms of examining these cases of fraud. So it's that breeds skepticism around the value of these programs. And there's more than a domestic impact here to how this has been handled. We're in the middle of the Kuzma review. The U.S. has been very clear about issues that they have around the integrity of our border, the integrity of our immigration programs. I am sure that the AG report has probably caught their attention as well. So it's not just the domestic impact of this, but what signal does it send to allies in the United States about how seriously we take these things? At some point, there needs to be some accountability for how poorly this was managed over the course of the last 4 or 5 years or more.
Nathan Cullen, are you there? Can you hear me?
I hope so.
Okay,
Let's find out.
I can hear you loud and clear, my friend. Thank you for doing that for us, getting back online. Okay, so what do you make of these figures that we're talking about here? A lot of cases slipped through, fraud potentially, and 800 at least. They did nothing about it. What's your take on this?
Well, it's a story of numbers, but it's also a story of human lives, and it's also a terrible reflection to Canadians who had any suspicions or worries about our immigration system. It very much hurts its reputation. And you can see it in the polling. I don't say it's directly just this story, but that for a number of years, we enjoyed very positive public viewpoints on immigration to Canada. The Liberals clearly let the basics of the system, the things that you need to have in a good immigration system, get out of control and cause enormous problems and a lot of erosion of faith amongst Canadians. I also lament the immigrants that were using the proper channels and ways to become a Canadian and move to Canada, that the reputation of this particular program became a back channel, a backdoor way to access Canada. I represented BC in some of those talks as an immigration minister. We told the federal government, we shut down a number of those colleges that were mentioned earlier that were just paper mills, because the reputation among some immigration lawyers in particular was this was a faster, cheaper way for people to be able to be in Canada for a number of years, and there was almost no chance of somebody following up and asking them to leave the country because they were there unlawfully. So it's brutal. I don't know how the immigration minister survives this, even though much of this happened previous to her time in the administration. Investigations are down, but the overall numbers are down. I don't know if she can explain her way out of how terrible this has been. She's not a great communicator, to say the least, and Mr. Carney may find it convenient at some point to ask her to go on and do another job.
Yeah, I want to highlight one other figure. So there's 4,000 investigations launched out of 153,000 potentially non-compliant students. Of those 4,000 investigations they launched, they found 3,100 of them were completed. That's what the AG found. But of those 3,105 completed, they considered them completed in 1,600 cases because people just didn't get back to them as they were trying to check on their status and whether they're actually in compliance with their study permit requirements. So they considered investigation complete, Supriya, when they just didn't hear back. So, the number is actually worse than 4,000. It's actually far worse because they canceled 915 of them, 1,600 of them just didn't get back to them. 50 of them, they found they were non-compliant, but they didn't do anything about it. There's still 37 investigations ongoing from 3 years ago. I mean, it's just what is happening at this department? It just seems like they really cannot get their hands around this program.
Yeah, and I mean, it's to the earlier point of, well, we tried to call them, they're maybe fraudulent, but they didn't get back to us,
right.
So whatever.
Yeah.
It's farcical.
Done, complete.
It's comical on its face, right? If you were going to make a caricature of what a bad system would look like, I mean, these have all of the sort of hallmarks of it. And I think to Nathan's point about needing to restore the sort of faith in the system, I mean, there definitely needs to be some sort of improvement that's not only just said and talked about, but that is felt on the ground in the system, and with folks recognizing that there has been, a material or substantive change here. But I would also, just again to touch on Nathan's point about the immigration lawyers that were, suggesting that there were these, colleges that were pumping out degrees and that's what perhaps was the better route. Like, that's also bad. Like, the fact that you had folks gaming the system and that we're trying to, I'm not suggesting you weren't saying it wasn't bad, Nathan. I'm just saying, like, there's more than just the department that's at play here. It seems like there's an entire ecosystem, including the colleges, including the immigration professionals, that are all sort of encouraging bad actors and bad apples to push their way through.
Yeah, to rip off the country, essentially. Kate, just pick up on Nathan's point about dropping support for immigration, because there actually was a recent poll out from Research Co., and they found that only a third of Canadians now currently hold a favourable view of immigration. So this surge in international students, the bungling of that program, has had long-term effects on how people view immigration overall.
Yes, and I think it is a mistake to attribute this to xenophobia. For a long time in Canada, there was a consensus on immigration, and systemic repeated failures that really started under the last government have undermined that system. And the AG report confirms a lot of the skepticism and cynicism that people have about the integrity of our system. The fact that there are tens of thousands of these international students here, we have no idea where they are, we don't keep tabs on them to know their immigration status, that contributes to a sense that the government has lost control of the program. And if this is just one part of the immigration system. So what does it say about the rest of the system, not subject to the AG report study? Are we expected to believe that everything there is going just fine? I mean, this is why there needs to be some accountability on the part of the minister and the government for having mismanaged this program for so long. I think that, Canadians have been actually quite patient and understanding about the importance of immigration and how that can contribute to a vibrant economy and vibrant culture. Reports like this and the mismanagement that is the substance of reports like this undercut and undermine that consensus.
Emily, quick final thought to you on this one.
I think an important nuance on, the notion of bad actors and bad apple. I think really, to me, what's really important to point out is the responsibility of the department, responsibility of sometimes immigration lawyers, and as well diploma mills or fake colleges. I can very much imagine a person living abroad and being presented, hey, here's a way to get into Canada, and here is this college, and you're going to be a student, and here how much it costs. Once again, you have people who are very potentially both complicit in something, but also victim of people who have been making profit off of their back. The reason why those diploma mills were so hard to close and that they were seriously hit only just during the pandemic is because people made a lot of money off of the back of a lot of international students, or people who wanted to be international students on them, and I want them to be investigated rather than just focusing on the foreign students itself. I think we need to be careful about the words we use and how much we approach this case because it is so volatile.
No, totally true. Nathan, quick final word to you too.
That's an exact point. There's victims in this on the student side as well, because they've oftentimes paid exorbitant fees, were made promises under a system that just didn't have any policing, and those that were manipulating it knew that. So ultimately, the responsibility is the government's. But we got to be, I think the language is important here, not to scapegoat out the students and simply say, well, they were the corrupt actors in this. I think the government holds a lot of accountability along with those colleges and some of those very lawyers that are always on the list of bad actors.